What is up, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new Reactcast. I do hope you are having an absolutely amazing day today. Holy, it's Reactcast Season 2, hashtag 18. Like, come on, bro. 18 weeks. Well, actually, there's been some breaks, but yeah, this Season 2's literally been going since literally September, bro, 2022, so. And I'm pretty sure it's at the end of June, bro. That's the way it's going to be. I'm probably going to end about January, February next year would be season 3 ending. Okay, guys, but now you're going to react to the moon landing. Was it fake? Was it all fake? We have to check it out here, guys.
Was it one small step for man and one giant leap for mankind? Or one of the most enduring conspiracy theories of all time? We have the facts. Ever since mankind took its first steps on the moon, photos and videos from the mission have been picked apart, inspected, and dissected. But about 400,000 people worked on the Apollo program. And that's a lot of mouths to keep shut about such a sensational secret. In the 1960s, the space race was serious business, and America was desperate to beat the Soviets to the moon, and plant a flag there. But did the government want it so badly that they faked the whole mission in order to ensure success? Some people think so. Conspiracy theories took off in the early 1970s, just a few years after Neil Armstrong set foot on the moon. This was the era of the Pentagon Papers and the Watergate scandal that rocked the United States. Some people were already distrustful of the government. The conspiracy theorists said the Apollo 11
Why is he
was
calling
shot
me
on
like
a
what the
secret
flip?
film set in the Hollywood Hills or a remote military base. The non-believers also say, take a look at the lighting in this photo. It's not real because the sun must be the only source of light in the image. But yet we can clearly see the lunar lander and the Apollo astronaut even in the shadow areas, meaning Hollywood lighting must have filled in the darkness. But NASA says the light gray lunar soil and white spacesuit created more than enough reflections to fill in the shadows. Lunar landing deniers point to this photo and ask, where are the stars? We're clearly not in space. But this picture is exposed for the brightly lit astronaut and lander, meaning it's not exposing for the dimly lit stars in the background. It's the same thing that happens in your nighttime photographs where your friends are exposed properly, but the background stays dark. And what about the flag? How is it waving in outer space if there's no wind? Well, NASA engineers knew a regular flag would hang lifeless. Not so good for patriotic imagery. So they engineered a flag to look like it was moving in a breeze. And for most of us, this far-out flag has never looked better.
Fake video? Oh my god, an ad. Oh my god.
One small step for man, one giant leap for conspiracy theorists the world over.
Wow, Neil Armstrong! Hey, wait a minute. You're supposed to be on the moon. I just saw it on TV.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 5 Apollo 11 moon landing conspiracies. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. For this list, we're breaking down the Apollo 11 moon landing conspiracies that simply won't go away. Prepare to get scienced. Number 5. No exhaust flame. Many conspiracy theorists have pointed to the Apollo 11 lunar module's lack of an exhaust flame while departing from the moon as proof that it was actually a model being pulled by strings on a soundstage in some top-secret Hollywood film studio. As exciting as that sounds, it's simply not true. You know the old expression, it's not rocket science? Well, in this case, it is. You see, the Saturn V rocket that launched Apollo 11 into orbit burned liquid oxygen and kerosene, the combination of which creates a massive flame. However, the lunar module used nitrogen tetroxide and kerosene 50, which produces transparent exhaust gases. Case closed. Number 4. No crater at the landing site. Despite the weight of the lunar module being reduced from 36,100 pounds on Earth to 6,100 pounds during its descent, people still wondered why it didn't produce a crater on the moon's dusty surface. Well, beneath all that dust is a layer of dense rock, which is far more difficult to leave an imprint on, thus explaining why the module failed to create a noticeable crater. Additionally, many wondered how Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin were able to leave footprints on the moon without moisture. Well, friction allows finely grained moon dust particles to hold their shape when moved around. So that's why the footprints are still there all these years later. Number 3. Multiple shadows. Many a conspiracy theorist has claimed that because photographs show multiple shadows of different lengths and angles, there had to have been an additional light source, such as a large lamp on site. Well, actually, because Neil and Buzz were snapping pics on an uneven, brightly lit landscape with the sun hovering just above the horizon, the ground produced a slew of different shadows. Another theory involves the stars, or lack thereof. How come there are no stars in the background of all those famous moon photographs? The answer? Nearby objects washed out the film. This is common in nighttime photography, with bright foreground objects effectively erasing distant background objects from the film. Number 2. No radiation poisoning. Protecting Earth from harmful solar radiation are the Van Allen belts. They form a ring around our planet, collecting and trapping all that pesky radiation in one place. Conspiracy theorists want to know why the astronauts on the Apollo 11 mission didn't succumb to radiation poisoning when they passed through. While it's true that there is a lot of radiation in the belts, Apollo 11 passed through them in less than 4 hours, and it takes days of exposure to be considered dangerous. Okay, say some, but what about meteors? Surely they would have done some damage. Due to the density of space, the chances of this happening are close to 0. Lawyered. Number 1. The waving flag. One of the most infamous Apollo 11 conspiracy theories involves the pictures of the American flag taken by Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin. In the iconic photos, the flag appears to be fluttering in the wind, which is admittedly odd seeing as how there's no atmosphere and by extension no wind on the moon. The reason Old Glory appears to be waving is because Neil and Buzz made it so. A wire was inserted in the top of the flag to keep it steady, and the astronauts created the waving effect as they were setting it up. In fact, once the flag was planted, it stopped waving completely.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out these other great clips from Watch Mojo and subscribe for new videos every day.
What is that video? Hey, yo! Oh my god, what the hell? Two sauce, bro.
The moon and space exploration are magnets for fake news. August 2022. A prominent French physicist discovers a star. Later admits it was a piece of chorizo. July 1969. Man lands on the moon. Or didn't, according to conspiracy theorists. But before any of this, it was August 1835 that launched the most imaginative moon hoax of them all. And it was this time, when the world looked up at the moon, they saw an entirely new lunar landscape that would change humanity as we know it.
Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Theirs was a journey like no other, for they were the first to set foot on the lunar surface.
It all began in Scotland, where the story cited its source from the Edinburgh Journal of Science. The headline read, "Great Astronomical Discoveries," made by prominent astronomer Sir John Herschel, who at the time was at a remote field trip in South Africa, and for the first time in history, by means of a remarkable new telescope, he was able to glimpse life fantastical on the moon.
The New York Sun published a series of 6 articles claiming that life had been discovered on the moon. Life including unicorns and beavers that walked on their hind legs. The crowning touch of it was the discovery of the so-called man bat. The Vespertilio homo was supposedly the Latin name. These remarkable 4-foot-tall creatures who flew and talked and built temples and did art and apparently fornicated in public.
Let's stop here. In case you missed that, he did say man bats on the moon fornicating in public, and people actually believed it.
The series caused a tremendous sensation. It was reprinted in rival newspapers. By some estimates, 90% of the people in New York City believed it. And by the time that the hoax was over, the New York Sun was the most widely read newspaper in the world.
But it turns out Sir John Herschel did not make these astronomical discoveries, nor were they reprinted from the Edinburgh Journal of Science. The two key players behind these fabricated lunar discoveries were New York Sun's publisher Benjamin Day and New York Sun's editor Richard Adams Locke.
The two men tested their moon legs and began setting their scientific experiments.
The New York Sun was one of the first penny papers. Its publisher, Benjamin Day, set out to create a tabloid paper affordable for everyone. With means of advertising, cheaper and faster steam-powered printing methods, papers plummeted from 6 cents to 1 cent. Before the penny press, papers were subscription-based and marketed to the elite. The penny papers were hawked on the street by paper boys and available to everyone.
Richard Adams Locke had created the most successful newspaper hoax of all time, but he had not intended it as a hoax.
And while this was a successful fake news story for Day, it was a satire gone wrong for Locke.
But to understand why people believe this fantastical story meant as a satire, we need to see what was happening back down on Earth.
New York, 1830s. New York was divided between pro-slavery and anti-slavery. Violent anti-slavery riots had hit the streets. People were hungry to escape the civil unrest. The remedy? To the moon! And while people looked to the skies, religion was also having a second awakening.
The astronomers of the time were religious astronomers. And the general belief among the astronomers was that all of the heavenly bodies were populated because God would not have created these worlds without also creating intelligent beings there to appreciate them.
And one of the popular astronomers was Thomas Dick. He was the Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson of the day, and he believed there was a population on the moon of over 4 billion creatures.
Oh my God,
Richard
bro.
Adams Locke found this all preposterous. He felt that this was religion impinging on the free play of science. And so what he decided he was going to do was to write a series of articles that lampooned the beliefs of these religious astronomers. And he said, if you believe that there are lunarians, creatures on the moon, I will give you lunar man-bats. And if you believe that there are seas full of water on the moon, I will give you seas full of water on the moon. And meanwhile, I will dress it all up in the kind of high-flown scientific rhetoric that you use just to expose your ideas.
And while scientific Locke played devil's advocate, little did he know God's work was already done.
What he had not anticipated, and this is the great irony of the moon hoax, was that the people of New York, and subsequently of America generally, had been so schooled in the ideas of these religious astronomers that when these articles came out, they simply believed them. They simply believed that they were true because it was so much like what they had already been reading.
And to add to the irony, religious groups started raising money to get Bibles up to the moon.
This was not something that he had anticipated at all. He was in a great deal of distress because he knew that it wasn't true, and yet he did not feel that he had the right to reveal this because the series belonged to his publisher. The New York Sun wanted to profit as much as they possibly could, and so they put out a lithograph. They hired a local artist to create a drawing of the lunar landscape based on the remarkably detailed descriptions that Locke had given. But then what happened was that the series became republished, not just in America, but all over the world. And so if you go back and look at these 19th century editions, you see lunar man-bats in all kinds of artistic styles.
Today it's impossible to escape fake news. In 2017, fake news was even named Word of the Year. But fake news is not a new phenomenon. This story went viral before social media, internet, TV, radio, And whether you believe in science or religion, we all want a ticket to the moon. And when we get there, we want to see two-legged beavers and unicorns and man-bats. Because after all,
the moon is a strange place for men to be flying to.
I call the bell sweet silver bells, something to say that color doctors and Magneta.
For nearly 50 years now, did you...
Everybody loves a conspiracy.
That's Paul Delaney, astronomer and senior lecturer at York University.
Can you effectively generate that type of illusion today? The answer is probably yes. But back in 1969, 70, 71, the answer is no.
Conspiracy number 1. How is the flag waving in no atmosphere? NASA knew image was everything, and if it wanted to secure more government funding, the public needed to be impressed.
A flag standing on the surface of the moon, which is limp, isn't nearly as good a photo op.
They made it look like it was waving in the wind by installing a horizontal rod on top of the flag. However, the astronauts were unable to extend the entire way, giving it that waving effect. Conspiracy number 2. Why aren't there any stars in the photos? A limited exposure range is the reason why we can't see stars in any of the Apollo photos. Unlike our eyes, cameras can take in only a certain amount of light. If the exposure is too high, everything will look too bright. Too low, everything will look too dark.
The sun was shining on them. They were reflecting brightly. The surface was reflecting brightly. Stars on Earth, let alone the moon, it's the same brightness. They're relatively faint.
Conspiracy number 3. The shadows are wrong. Conspiracy theorists point out that since the sun is the only light source on the moon, shadow angles should be consistent. However, when sunlight hits the surface of the moon, some of it bounces off, meaning the moon itself becomes a reflective light source. Professional photographers refer to this as a film. That's why an astronaut in the lunar module's shadow isn't completely shrouded in black. The moon's light is softening the shadow. Conspiracy number 4. Why didn't the astronauts die from radiation exposure? The spacecraft's hull shielded the astronauts from being exposed to lethal radiation while traveling through the Van Allen belts, layers in Earth's magnetic field that trap solar wind particles, creating high levels of radiation. Once cleared, they were exposed to natural background radiation.
You certainly wouldn't want the astronauts on the surface of the moon in their spacesuits for days on end, but for the hours that we're talking about on the lunar surface, the radiation environment is comparable to the radiation environment we have here.
Conspiracy number 5. Who filmed Neil Armstrong stepping on the moon?
Are we going to send people to the moon to stand on the moon and not have a camera strapped to the outside of the lunar module?
NASA put cameras on every piece of the Apollo spacecraft. That's why we have stunning images like this, and this.
You don't go that far and miss the photo opportunity of a century of history.
If you're still skeptical, several photos of the moon's surface have been taken over the decades, showing Apollo lunar module exactly where Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin parked it 50 years ago.
The notion that a conspiracy of the magnitude that's required, needing tens of thousands of people to stay quiet about it for decades, again, the US government can't keep a secret for more than a few hours, generally speaking, let alone for decades.
15 seconds. Guidance is in.
All right. Guys, that was a crazy conspiracy theory. Okay, before I head out here, guys, I just wanted to tell you that these are all pre-recorded now, of course. But I wanted to tell you that this Saturday, I'm pretty sure, this Saturday, this Saturday to the following Saturday will be no contact from me. The videos will still be up, but scheduled up. But you won't, if you comment, you won't get a reply. The community tabs will all be scheduled and all, just to tell you that. So do not worry. But the videos will still be all up on main channel. So don't worry about that, because it will still all be there scheduled. But I won't be replying and I won't be active because I'll be having a week break. And then, of course, the same will go for 3 full weeks. For that week break, then marathon week, but I will be live on there will be no live streams, by the way, at all that week. But Marathon Week, a full week live from Easter Sunday to the following. Tune in, but the videos on main channel will be scheduled, and I won't be replying to anything. But main channel or DJ Goes Live, if you want to come and say hi, I will be live there for a full week. Well, not really, like, but yeah. So that is it, guys. This is all the overreactors, no replies. So yeah, I just want to tell you that. So guys, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.